Hi everybody, welcome to Vijayaswa Foundation. My name is Manat Swaminathan and today we are going to learn about setting up of a pharmacovigilance system. It can even be perceived as setting up of a pharmacovigilance department in a pharmaceutical company, right? Or else even in a service provider. What does a pharmacovigilance system entail? The pharmacovigilance system includes the most important, or I would consider the backbone of the pharmacovigilance system, and that is the quality management system. A pharmacovigilance system is incomplete without a very good quality management system. Then you also need the right people, right? So that is the personnel. The pharmacovigilance department requires the right kind of personnel with the right set of qualifications and I would say some kind of skills, right? So that is, and even expertise. So that is required. Then you also need the necessary infrastructure. We'll be talking about all these in detail. Besides, you also need to have sources of adverse events, right? So what if you have a good pharmacovigilance system, but you don't receive adverse events? So that may be a problem. So that is why you need to have proper mechanisms to receive adverse event reports. Now, first, let us look at the quality management system. What does the pharmacovigilance quality management system entail? It first of all it includes the quality documentation system. So that can be a change control, a corrective and preventive action, or deviations. All these are the quality documentation system components, and these are required. Then you should have an efficient training process. So training can be for the pharmacovigilance department personnel as well as for the company personnel, right? So anybody in the company can come across an adverse event report. So for that, you need to have a proper training process for ensuring that everyone is aware about pharmacovigilance and adverse event reporting. Then you should also have processes for archival of documents, right? So it can be both physical as well as electronic, so that is required. Besides, you need to have the right standard operating procedures, working practices, guidelines, and other procedures. Then you also need to consider the business partners and the vendors. By vendors, I mean the service providers. At times, companies outsource all the pharmacovigilance activities. So that time, the vendors or the service providers play a very important role. Then you also need to consider the business partners. So these are the distributors or the suppliers, right? At times it can even be the wholesalers who can distribute your product. So all these fall under the purview of the quality management system. Then you also need to have a proper process for validating your IT systems or the pharmacovigilance systems. So that is computer system validation. So recently it has been retermed as CSA, right? So like that, you need to ensure that your systems for receiving adverse events are properly validated. And you also need to ensure that the documentation is available during an inspection or even an audit. Then audits and inspections, right? How do you assess whether the pharmacovigilance system is viable, sustainable, and whether there are proper processes in place? So that is through audits and inspections. Audits will be conducted by the pharmaceutical company itself, or else they can hire an external contractor, and inspections are conducted by the regulatory agencies. Then finally, you need to ensure continuous inspection readiness, right? You need to ensure that the pharmacovigilance system can be auditable or can be inspected by any regulatory agency at any point in time. Nowadays, regulatory agencies don't give you any notice; they directly walk in, right? And you also have the option of remote inspections. So they will call up and say that tomorrow we would like to remotely inspect you. So that is also a possibility, right? So these are the various aspects of the quality management system. Then infrastructure. So what do you need in terms of infrastructure? You need a proper pharmacovigilance system, right? You need a pharmacovigilance system database or a safety database. Um, You can invest in high-end safety databases like Oracle Argus or Aris Global or some other such databases. In terms of countries, they can invest in something like a Vigibase or a Vigiflow, which is offered by the WHO. And if not, if you receive very few adverse events, then you can even manage with the use of Excel, right? Or you can even use something like a Microsoft Access database. You can also do that. But only thing is, you need to ensure that these in-house databases are properly validated. So that's something you should always remember. Then you also need to have some kind of system for the quality management system. Now, it is also okay if you do all these documentations like change controls, corrective and preventive actions, deviations, incidents, audits, and also the archival system, everything on paper, that should be okay. But at times, companies even consider having a proper quality management system, something like a TrackWise or a Viva, right? You can do that. Then fax, right? Now you might think that fax is outdated. Absolutely not. Even today, many regulatory agencies prefer to share adverse events using fax. They feel that it is more secure. And you don't need to have a fax machine nowadays. You can do it even online. So you can have e-fax, right? So you can even send fax online. So that is also a possibility. Then you also need to have proper infrastructure in terms of IT systems. That is, you can have something on cloud, you can have on-premise infrastructure. So that is something you have to ensure, right? So this is also going to ensure real-time connectivity, right? So that way, this is very, very important. Then finally, you need to have disaster recovery and management. What if you have all the data in a particular server and there is an earthquake in your at the place where your office is located, and everything gets destroyed, right? So in that case, you should have a backup measure in place. So that is a disaster recovery system, wherein if say you have your primary database in US or the primary server in the United States, you can consider having a backup server in France, right? Or you can consider in Singapore. So you can do that. So that will ensure that your data is always secure, right? Then in-house versus outsourcing, right? You might have noticed that I didn't talk about personnel as resources. You need to have right kind of people in pharmacovigilance. Now, some companies prefer to have an in-house pharmacovigilance system, and wherein they would recruit all kinds of people. That would include pharmacists, science graduates, then IT experts, quality experts, and so on. At times, companies also consider outsourcing the entire set of activities. So that is also allowed and possible. But then you need to ensure that you have proper QMS in place to govern the outsourced activities. So anything is okay. You can either have an in-house system or an outsourced system, or else you can have a hybrid system where some of the activities are in-house and the rest of the activities are outsourced. So that is also a possibility. Then, in terms of personnel, something which I touched upon in my previous slide, so you need to have the right set of people, right? So that would be healthcare professionals, non-healthcare professionals. Also, you may require call center executives, right? Somebody who can support with medical information and take calls, right? So that is also a possibility. Apart from this, you also should consider IT, right? So even you require the right set of IT expertise in your company. At times, you can even consider outsourcing IT. So that is also a possibility. Depending on the size of the company, they would evaluate whether they need an in-house IT team or outsourced IT team. Then finally, you need the proper quality management system, right? So again, you can consider in-house quality team, or else you can even consider partly outsourced team, wherein somebody can be an external contractor and they can audit your department on a frequent basis, right? So that is also a possibility. Now, this reminds me that the days are evolving, right? And now we are talking about automation and artificial intelligence. So, what is going to happen in the future is not known, but yes, we can predict that we may have robots doing a lot of activities, and all systems might get automated. That you click a button, and the adverse event report that has been received gets processed and also gets submitted. So you never know, right? And even you can have an automated medical information system where somebody calls up and reports something, and that gets recorded in your safety database and even reported to the regulatory agency. So no human intervention. So this might happen in the future. Then who are the stakeholders in pharmacovigilance? So pharmacovigilance is not only about the pharmacovigilance department, right? So you need other stakeholders to cooperate, support, and then only you will be able to sustain a pharmacovigilance inspection, because all there may be many activities that may relate to patient safety, but that may not fall under the purview of the pharmacovigilance department. So let us look at these stakeholders. So first of all, you may need to have a global pharmacovigilance team. Then that would also include the QPPV office. You would need to have pharmacovigilance vendors, service providers, and also a source for clinical data, right? That is clinical safety. That is something which you would know. And how about the other departments that would be important in this? So first of all, you need to consider the quality and manufacturing, right? So if there is a recall or there is a quality issue with your product, so that is something which you need to consider, right? So that is the first. Then manufacturing, again, that can be related to a manufacturing issue, right? Why am I talking about this? If in case there is an inspection that is related to manufacturing and quality, what we term as GMP inspection, that time they may even consider the pharmacovigilance aspects. So that's why it is important. Then you also need to consider market complaints. Okay, so that's something, the product complaints, lack of efficacy, which might be considered as an adverse event come product complaint. Then manufacturing quality, to ensure that there are no loopholes in the manufacturing system. Sometimes adverse events may occur only due to manufacturing defect, so that is also possible. Then finally, EHS. So what is this, right? So it is all about environmental health and safety, right? And this again plays an important role. How about your medicines? Are they causing some kind of pollution, right? How do you dispose medicines? Are they impacting the environment, right? So those things also need to be considered. Ultimately, these are indirect aspects of safety. Then medical and regulatory, right? So the medical department and regulatory are also important stakeholders, wherein it can be the regulatory affairs team that may take care of the product labeling, artworks, and so on. They may even take care of the safety variations and so on. So labeling is a very important department. Sometimes it may be under the regulatory affairs, or sometimes it may be independent. But then this also can be considered during a pharmacovigilance inspection, because the inspector wants to understand if your labeling document is updated at all times and what processes you follow. Then artwork, right? So that is, so labeling is slightly different from artwork. So artwork can be something like the box in which your product is, the packaging, right? So the design and those things. So artwork is over there. Then medical affairs. So this can even be related to medical marketing, right? So these departments may be involved in training of medical representatives, and the medical representatives can also report adverse events to this team, and they are also involved in training the uh, marketing team. So that way, medical affairs will also play an important role as a stakeholder in for pharmacovigilance. Then medical information, right? Call centers, or these are the people who may come across adverse events, right? They may receive a phone call from a patient who would report an adverse event. So medical information is also an important stakeholder. Then IT and legal. You might be wondering how legal is involved. And IT, yes, it's quite obvious, wherein you need to have them for supporting the safety database and also for validating the database, right? And also ensuring that you have proper systems in place which are available at all times, right? Then you also need to have computer systems, laptops, right? The disaster recovery and so on. Then you need to have proper infrastructure, right? Either servers in cloud, on cloud, or else on premise. Then BCP, business contingency, right? That if you want to work from home, that then you should have proper accesses, right? Then also the legal team, wherein the legal team plays a very important role in terms of contracts and safety agreements, right? Yeah, reviewing safety agreements, ensuring that there are agreements in place between the various stakeholders, primarily the business partners and vendors. Apart from this, the legal team may even come across some medical legal adverse events, right? So that is also a possibility. So that way, a legal team also is an important stakeholder in pharmacovigilance. Then finally, marketing team. Now, why marketing? And also, I'm talking about other departments. I'll be talking about them. Sales. So these are the people who uh, are involved in commercialization of the product, right? So it is possible that they may bring in new distributors or business partners, right? Or they may even consider something like having say patient support program, right? Then they would also bring in distributors and partners who can undertake pharmacovigilance on behalf of your company, right? So that is also a possibility. So that way, marketing department also plays a very important role. Then finally, the website, right? The company website. So this can be an important source of adverse event. So this may be under the purview of the IT department or the marketing department. So sometimes people would ask, say, product availability queries or marketing related queries, and at times somebody may even receive report an adverse event, right? So the marketing team can also receive adverse events. So that's why these are all important stakeholders, and they need to be appropriately trained so that they can communicate all adverse events to the pharmacovigilance department, right? Finally, admin. Why I'm talking about admin, right? So how about the security staff or the receptionist in your company who can receive phone calls, right? And the security staff who can take phone calls after the office hours, right? It's a holiday and there is nobody in the office, but you have the security personnel who take the phone call. Probably it's a patient who is reporting an adverse event, right? So all these stakeholders need to work in sync to ensure that there is a pharmacovigilance system which is efficient and powerful as well, right? Then I quickly wanted to show you about or talk to you about the WHO PV resources. So something which has been developed by the WHO. This is how it looks, and what I can do is I can quickly show you this website as well. So this is the WHO PV resources website, free of cost, right? Free to access. www.whopvresources.org. So if you look at this website, there is a resources section, and what you can do is you can click on that, and you can look at the various documents which are available free of cost. Uh, and also you can download very useful document from this website. So you have something like uh, National Pharmacovigilance System, and also if you click on read more, you will have more information about the various documents, and also there is an assessment for all of them, right? So that it ensures that you learn something very effectively. Then setting up a pharmacovigilance center, right? This is primarily for the countries which want to get enrolled into the WHO program for international drug monitoring. But even if yours is a company and you want to set up something in pharmacovigilance, then this will be a very good resource, right? You can find all the steps in uh, setting up a pharmacovigilance center, right? So you can do that. So lot of useful resources are available out here also. Apart from this, you get more resources about the signal detection, benefit risk assessment, communication in pharmacovigilance. And on the right, you can see FAQ and appendix. So frequently asked questions, right? So that's again useful. And then you also have the appendix. So that gives you some information about the other regulatory agencies and also something more about pharmacovigilance. So I would recommend you to look at this website. Extremely useful. Right? So that was the WHO PV resources. So I trust you found this session to be useful, right? It's quite interesting as well. With this, you will be able to set up a good pharmacovigilance system, right, in your company or in your country, right? And you now know what all things are required. Based on that, you can go step by step and get everything in place. Apart from this, I wanted to quickly talk to you about Medra and Houdini. So you also need to have a Medra dictionary in place, right? So you need to do or you need to have a separate subscription directly from the MSSO. So that's something I can, if you want, I can share the link with you as well. And you also have something called WHODD or WHO Drug Global, where if you receive an adverse event, you can code the drug as well. So those are the additional subscriptions that you may evaluate. Okay. So I trust you found this topic to be useful. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, comments, or even suggestions. And all the best in your efforts to set up a pharmacovigilance system. Thank you.